On this episode of CyberWatch, hackers hit the road to attack car dealers, sports organizations provide a profitable new playing field for cybercriminals, and the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities database gets a new entry for cyber defenders to worry about. All this and a personal safety tip to open Cybersecurity Awareness Month today in CyberWatch. Hello, and welcome to the CyberWatch podcast for the week of September 29th, 2024. This is your weekly roundup of the news and analysis published on the CyberWatch and brought to you by Access Point Consulting. I'm your host, Curtis Franklin. Let's get to the news. Most people have trouble working up a lot of sympathy for automobile dealers. With sales teams that are the subject of stereotypes and jokes, these dealers are rarely companies that show up on urban planning documents as highly sought-after industries for new developments. But there's no question about the sector's impact on the economy. More than 1.7 million individuals are directly involved, and millions more support the industry in areas like finance, insurance, and parts supply. So when a cyber attack struck CDK Global, a software provider serving over 15,000 car dealerships across North America, it had more than a small impact on the economy. The attack, which occurred over 2 days, forced the CDK Global system to take its systems offline, leaving dealerships scrambling to function, slowing down transactions, and frustrating customers. As is the case in so many industries, data kept on customers and supply chain participants make automobile dealers ripe for attack and exploitation. The financial and operational toll from cyber attacks is massive. On average, ransomware attacks on dealerships lead to 16 days of downtime with an average payout of over $228,000. But perhaps the most serious impact is the erosion of customer trust. A staggering 84% of customers surveyed said they would refuse to buy another vehicle from a dealership that failed to protect their data. Some aspects of the industry make defending dealers from cyber attack more challenging. For example, there's an average annual employee turnover of 24%, which makes training on good cybersecurity practices difficult. That's one of the reasons that phishing attacks are so popular and so successful against auto dealers. Other attack vectors include the free Wi-Fi offered to customers, Wi-Fi that can provide a ready point of entry to business systems for criminals. Now, auto dealerships fall under the Federal Trade Commission's Safeguards Rule, which requires non-bank financial institutions to implement robust cybersecurity measures. Dealerships must create comprehensive security programs designed to protect sensitive customer data. Specific steps they need to take include appointing a qualified individual to manage their cybersecurity program, conducting detailed risk assessments, monitoring and limiting access to sensitive data, encrypting that sensitive information, training staff on cybersecurity best practices, developing an incident response plan, regularly assessing the security practices of third-party service providers, and implementing multi-factor authentication, or the equivalent security measures to safeguard customer information. In the long term, dealers will have to become more proactive about their cybersecurity. When they get serious, they'll be able to reassure both regulators and customers that they're working to protect sensitive data. That means they can trust their systems to protect information while dealers get back to the serious business of selling cars and trucks. An industry transformation can be the cue for a transformation for the criminals who prey on that industry, and nowhere is that more true than in the land of big dollar sporting events. Most modern professional supports organizations, that's PSOs for those in the know, are data-driven organizations with information stored on employees, players, fans, customers, partners, and the ways that they all come together. In general, PSOs have incorporated new forms of internet connectivity, improving productivity and efficiency, but opening a broader attack surface for hackers, online criminals, and cyber spies. As early as 2020, a report from the UK government said that 70% of PSOs had experienced at least one harmful cyber incident, a rate roughly double that of business as a whole. Further, a 2023 report from the NCC Group listed the ways in which PSOs are less mature than corresponding general business companies of a similar size and age. PSOs tend not to have CISOs, with the general IT department responsible for the organization's cybersecurity. Many industry observers describe a frequent case of the PSO resembling two linked companies. One large, well-funded, and sophisticated company that represents the players and coaches, and a much smaller, much poorer, and far less mature company that handles traditional business tasks. But there is, as it turns out, a potential bright side to the PSO immaturity situation. People in the general public tend to like sports teams and want to know all they can about them, including, in many cases, how the back office operates. And this presents an opportunity for the public to learn about cybersecurity to the point that some fans might be able to improve their own company's security. PSOs come in sizes ranging from local minor league franchises to the Olympic Games and FIFA World Cup. And these organizations are subject to attacks from phishing and credential stuffing to business email compromise attempts that come mostly from low-level, financially motivated hackers. When the PSOs defend themselves with tactics that include zero-trust security and rigid system segmentation, it suggests to their fans that these same tactics might be effective in their companies. That suggestion could lead to a major improvement in the maturity of those customer organizations. Still, there is room for improvement in the sporting world. For example, there is no Information Sharing and Analysis Council, or ISAC, for PSOs. The 16 business sectors designated by the federal government as critical infrastructure all have ISACs, as do other industries like space and auto manufacturers. But sporting organizations still depend on informal communications between staff and managers to share information on industry-wide cyber threats. If you were to moneyball the situation, you might even say that there is a cheap, low-hanging fruit waiting to be picked by sporting cyber defenders. They really should get busy with their picking. Now, before we go, here's some information you should have on your cybersecurity radar. On August 12th, Ivanti issued an advisory regarding a critical vulnerability in the Ivanti Virtual Traffic Manager, identified as CVE 2024-7593. Important thing here is the vulnerability has a CVSS score of 9.8. The vulnerability stems from an incorrect implementation of an authentication algorithm. The good news is that patches were released on August 19th for all affected versions. Bad news is that on September 24th, the vulnerability was added to the CISA Known Exploited Vulnerabilities catalog, which elevates its priority and its risk. Exploiting this vulnerability can lead to a complete loss of system confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Essentially, the flaw allows attackers to bypass critical authentication measures in the Ivanti Virtual Traffic Manager, putting systems at serious risk. If your organization uses Ivanti Virtual Traffic Manager, you should patch immediately, limit admin access to the management interface, and be vigilant for signs of compromise. Be careful out there. And because October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we're going to be presenting some simple to implement tips to improve your cybersecurity. Today's tip is quite simple. Forget passwords. Now, I'm not saying you should just keep the default credentials on each system, but a password is too short. try a passphrase instead. As an example, the credential for an account on PixelSwiz might include the passphrase, "This is my number one passphrase for PixelSwiz," where it reads something like this. Notice that it has a combination of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, and it's quite long. Now, in addition, you can remember it, so you don't have to put it in a cloud-based password store. Think about it. It's a authentication practice that's practical, effective, and might even help your more difficult users up their security game. Stay with the CyberWatch podcast throughout October, when we will bring you cybersecurity tips each episode. Well, that's it for this week. Please join us again next week for the CyberWatch podcast, brought to you by Access Point Consulting. And be sure to visit CyberWatch on LinkedIn and at www.accesspointconsulting.com/CyberWatch. I'm Curtis Franklin. We'll see you next week.